needed to make aluminum. Let's bring in Liu Zhiqin, Senior Research Fellow at the Chongyang Institute of Financial Studies at Renmin University for more on how potential political instability in Guinea may impact one of the country's most important sources of foreign revenue. Mr. Liu, thank you so much for joining us. So let me ask you first, just how sensitive are global aluminum supply chains to a possible disruption from Guinea?
I think, as your question mentioned, that there is still a possible disruption for this bauxite supply. Because as we know, in the past 30 years, the situation in Africa, especially in Guinea, is not so stable. And some surprising always happened before. So that made the world and the global market supply always uncertain. So this is a big question, because the only question for us, or only concern for us, is that whether the international community accepted the coup in Guinea. And if not, what else could be happening? For instance, if the boycott or sanction will be imposed by the international community, that could be a bigger challenge for the buyer and for the seller.
Got it. And we recently saw aluminum prices rising to a decade high, Mr. Liu, despite, of course, right now, no reports yet of the coup shutting down the country's bauxite mining sector. We heard that from our Tijan Bangura just now as well. So it seems like any government in Guinea willing to do that would be shooting itself in the foot. Should the markets then be overly concerned about any sort of supply chain disruptions from Guinea?
I have to say that the concern must be necessary, but the over-concern is not so necessary at the moment, because we have to see what the reaction from the international community, especially from the Western major countries, whether they can accept the coup or the political stability in this region. So this is quite important. And the pricing hiking or pricing turbulence always happened in this field. As we know that I personally handled such a business in the past 30 years with the Swiss commodity traders, that they are in charge of the aluminum raw materials import and export all over the world. They can be sometimes in charge of over 60% of the global supply chain. So in this way, the pricing turbulence is very actually threat to the stability of the global market. But nowadays, is something can have changed. What is changed? Because the market is now the seller's market or the buyer's market. I think this is the buyer's market. So I think all the problem or government or regime in the Guinea, they will consider what could be happening economically, the damage to their situation. This is a key problem for their governance. I think the price hiking will be continued to be concerned, but too much concern is not necessary at the moment.
Yeah, again, I mean, bauxite, this is one of Guinea's main foreign revenue sources, and any government, again, in Guinea, who wants to do some kind of damage to the sector would essentially be shooting itself in the foot. Let's assume, Mr. Liu, that we do see some kind of impact to Guinea's mining sector ahead. Can global supply chains then adjust and source new supplies of bauxite elsewhere? Because, again, like I mentioned, Guinea is the largest exporter of this raw material in the world so far.
Yes, as we know, in the past 20 years, we can see from the history development, I think the bauxite material supply could be always the decisive factor in the Guinea economic development. That's why they pay great attention and focusing on this industry. But at the moment, as I just mentioned, that if the buyers can be stable, reliable, like China, and sustainable, I think nobody in the world, especially for the Guinea supply side, they would be very keen to keep the good relations and good reputation to supply these products to the global market. At the moment, I think some big traders, especially the commodity traders in Europe and in other continents, are trying to be involved in such gambling or such struggling for the price. But I think at the moment, the decisive factor relies on the buyer side.
Okay, many thanks for those insights. Liu Zhiqin, Senior Research Fellow at the Chongyang Institute of Financial Studies. El Salvador has become the first country in the world to accept Bitcoin as legal tender, a milestone, of course, for cryptocurrencies. But the historic adoption got off to a bumpy start on Tuesday when Bitcoin dropped as much as 16% in the morning. In the meantime, the government-backed Bitcoin app had a technical glitch with user registrations before it was unplugged to increase server capacity. And as our Alistair